to me.
It was very nice, very nice. Can you hear that impala?
I just heard an alarm call behind me, yeah. There's only one though.
Yeah. I don't know if it's us that is...
Oh,
Might be we get a leopard.
that would be wonderful.
You're sweating, Boogie.
Yo, it's the fire.
Hey, you've been working.
Yeah, we have. So we're going to start off at, for me, one of the highlights from early in the week was the Salala Breakaway Pride.
Yes.
Oh, it was incredible. We went across to Arathusa early in the morning, and they were full. I heard they'd killed a giraffe to the north.
I heard that, yeah.
And then basically, it was the most incredible mist that morning. Literally, you could just see one lion, and then you sort of like had lion ghosts. And a nice big pride, 13 lions in a pride.
A big pride. Was it a female giraffe, do you know?
It was a big male giraffe.
Really?
And they finished it in 3 days, flat.
Wow. Well, that just goes to show, 13 lion.
It's a lot of meat.
It is.
No, and then we were really lucky. So while we were sitting there, and just incredible mist, I mean, it was... and I know we were battling a little with the camera because of all the perspiration that was getting stuck on there. But lovely, cool weather. Lions were full. They'd just finished the giraffe the day before. And there's a lot of sub-adults. There's 9 sub-adults in that group.
9.
So
4
lots
females.
of playing
Oh,
and jumping and just
even with those full bellies.
Even with those full bellies.
But you know, I can't believe it because it wasn't your only lion misty morning.
No,
I don't know. I don't know. I watched a bit of the highlights of your other misty morning lion, and I don't know how that would be
incredible.
beaten because that was you had the light, you had the mist, you had the steamy breath. There was all the elements of just the most perfect filming opportunity.
It was, but that's a lot of breakaway. What made it really interesting. So while we were sitting there, we heard impala alarm calling.
Yeah.
And there were 2 other guides there. So one of the other guides said, I'm going to go have a quick look. So then he comes on the radio and says, no, there's an ingwe. So I was like, oh, leopard. And she was walking straight towards the lions. We didn't get we managed to find her. She saw the lions before they saw her.
Lucky.
But the lions had heard all the impala alarming, so you could see all their ears pricking up and a bit of interest. So she was literally, it was Kwatile female.
Oh, yeah?
So the same
Never
one
seen her.
we'd seen mating with them in Vula.
I've never seen her.
No, she's a very, very, very pretty leopard. And I actually used to see her mother down in the south.
Okay. Who was she?
Campbell Corpies from between sort of Double M and the central areas.
That's sort of Martley
area,
Yeah.
But she only on the periphery, right? You didn't see her often.
Yeah.
But so she's sort of jogging, looking back. So quite a few of the bigger lionesses just ignored. And all the sub-adults, all 9 of them sort of just started going into that Terminator woodland. And then, so they forgot about, and the leopard made very good tracks, and she was gone. And then all of a sudden they sort of bumped into that herd of impala.
Yeah.
And they showed proper cub, like, inexperienced hunting behavior.
Okay.
So she got, and the impala was still all looking down there where the leopard had gone. So, I mean, she must have got 20 meters from them.
Yeah.
And then she started stalking too quickly, and then absolute pandemonium. She ran into the middle of them, but now there are 9 other lions around.
Yeah.
And just, I was convinced one of them was going to grab. But
smoked.
I'm getting a little bit of smoke there.
Move up a bit.
Over. So I was convinced that one of them was going to get lucky because it's she split the impala into about 3 or 4, and there was another lion there, another lion, but just complete inexperience by the sub-adults.
In contrast to what I experienced with the kahumas down at Twin Dams, I think it was the next day that you had that wonderful morning with them. And it was just so sad that we had this momentary loss of signals, satellite went down or something, and...
Satellite fairies.
Yeah, or gremlins.
Gremlins, fairies.
Yes, gremlins, fairies, unicorns. Call them what you will. But yes, they went off after a giraffe, and what was interesting there, because they were also quite full, they'd evidently had a buffalo. We didn't really know, nobody really knows where they had the buffalo.
In Kruger, as far as my understanding
Really?
is. Yeah.
And they came all the way with full bellies.
I know, very strange behavior.
But then
Maybe they met another pride on the Kruger side.
But what was strange was that there was this hyena that was seen running out onto Gowrie Main with a buffalo leg in its mouth.
That is very strange. So from the guys down in the sort of east, they said that they came across from Kruger full, and they'd heard buffalo distress calls near the Kruger boundary.
I guess it's one of those mysteries, and we're so often left with mysteries of what happened, and we probably will never find out.
That's one of the joys.
I
of being
suppose
in
that
the
was
bush.
my highlight. Was even though I wasn't broadcasting, I wish that I could have had you with me for that. Was how those lionesses went off after, and he was a beautiful young male giraffe. He was really beautiful looking. Just his coat, his colouring, and we didn't get to see him after that because they chased him so far. But what was interesting there was that the cubs held back completely, and they let the females go ahead.
See, I think in this situation that the females were full of giraffes. And they're like, I'm going to sleep here. Cubs, you go play. Go be full of nonsense youngsters.
They need to learn a lesson.
Exactly. And it's a very good learning experience for those lion cubs to be able to sort of make mistakes. And they sort of, oh no, I went too fast and ruined the hunt.
Also, what are the chances of a lion cub getting an impala?
No, yes. Impala are very, very good at evading. All their senses are incredible because everything eats them.
And because there's so many of them.
That's also true.
Yeah. So many eyes, so many ears, so many noses. So the more the merrier. And it's often the first one that calls that is the least likely to be caught. You know, sort of a lot of people might think that it's an altruistic gesture that I'm saving the herd because I'm calling and shouting at the lion or the leopard. Meanwhile, it's a case of I've seen you first, I'm shouting first, I'm the least likely to be caught first.
It is, but it's going to be interesting to see how that between the Kahumas and Salala breakaways are actually started to push a little bit outside of their natural territory, what's going to be happening.
Yes.
But sticking to big cats.
Yes.
And leopards, we've had a really good leopard week this week as well.
We've had a fantastic leopard week.
One of the more interesting sightings for me was a Tingana. Outside a definite aardvark burrow.
I remember you mentioned it.
No, it was incredible. So we drove up and at that time he was very intently sitting and looking into this aardvark burrow. And while we were there, he moved off about 2.5 meters and lay down. And we drove up to the edge of the burrow to look down into it to see the tracks and stuff like that. And we could see aardvark tracks. And also with aardvark burrows, there's a very distinct, they've always got this sort of layer of flies around their burrow, more so than warthog and porcupine and other animals. So we're pretty confident it was an aardvark burrow. And then he waited there for nearly a full 24 hours before he moved off.
I didn't know that he waited that long. But also just for some of our new viewers, this is a leopard that has become an aardvark specialist. And if you don't know what an aardvark is, it's one of the first words in the dictionary. Yep. But it is an ant bear. It's an African ant bear. It's nothing like the giant ant bears of South America. This is a really very heavy, piggish looking.
Almost 60, 70 kilograms.
Yeah,
a really
very
big,
heavy,
big
round, muscular little animal with very, very big claws. Digs into termite mounds. It's predominantly a termite eater. And it lives in the termite mounds as well. And I've never known a leopard to feed on aardvark before until I saw Tingana on an aardvark kill that I called a steenbok.
We all make mistakes.
And I think that was his second, and then he had a third one after that. So he would probably go after.
As far as I've heard from the guys at Arethusa this year.
So it's definite. You know, we get this. Sometimes you find an old leopard that just manages to find that one thing that is becomes so adept at hunting. And I've known warthog hunters, I've known porcupine hunters, but it's the first time I've got to know an aardvark hunter. Which is quite sad because he's going to deplete the population of aardvark.
That is true.
How many have you seen?
In my life?
No, here.
I've seen one in the Sabi Sands in my whole guiding career.
Yeah, I think maybe I've seen one or two. If I remember, I probably saw one down in the Sabi in the old days that my brain can't recall, but I've seen one here at Juma.
I haven't seen one yet at Juma.
With
seen
Herman.
Tracks?
We were with Herman. In fact, I'm pretty sure that one day we'll find Tingana just to the south of Treehouse Dam, amongst that sandy veld, just south there, where there are a lot of holes. And we were sitting with a herd of elephants, and the Land Rover just happened to be in a spot where maybe the weight of the landy started pushing sand in, because these are not termite mounds. This is just burrowing straight into the sandy soil. And this aardvark, I think Herman saw it. Aardvark came barreling out of one of those holes, and it was just a bit too fast to catch it on camera. But I have seen aardvark at home. I've actually got a road at home called Sambani Road, so I'm lucky that I've seen it at home. Not often.
No,
not often. And you
all.
Don't even see their tracks that often either.
They don't walk down the roads like a lot of animals.
No.
Still with leopards, probably my most exciting sighting of the week.
Yes,
I was literally vibrating after that sighting. It was absolutely incredible. which was the quarantine male leopard stalking guinea fowl. Or actually, we followed him quite a while. He stalked something we couldn't see. But more interestingly, we're going to test out a new piece of equipment that we've got in final control now. And we're all very excited. And we'd really like to know about what you guys think. So we're actually going to be able to show back the clip of Quarantine trying to catch those guinea fowl and in slow-mo. So this is really, really exciting. So we're quite excited to test out the new equipment. So we're going to hand over to Final Control, so you guys will be able to have a look at that clip, and then we'll come back and we will chat about it afterwards. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that. We were very excited to test out the new equipment that we've got in FC. And please, we would really like your feedback on that clip and what you guys thought of it, and if you think this is a good addition to the FireSide chat. And you can do that by emailing us at questions@wildearth.tv, or if you're on Twitter, you can just use the hashtag #SafariLive. But while we wait for your responses, I'm just going to chat a little bit about while I was there.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You watch him as he spotted the guinea fowl off at about 40 meters, and a very different stalk than what he would have done with Impala. Yeah. So he sort of jogged up, and then you could almost see all those muscles in his body, like a coil, sort of compact, and all that sort of latent energy almost, and then he just
kinetic energy.
There we go. And he exploded into the air. He managed to hit the one guinea fowl down to the ground.
Yes.
And then I thought, that's it. Bang! He's got him. Not so much.
No.
You saw feathers, and then the guinea fowl sort of took a couple of steps and then was off again, and then he exploded again. And I mean, sort of a Superman jump, sort of straight like this. And I guess, I mean, I'm just under about 10 centimeters shy of 2 meters, and I think he would have been another meter above my head. Yeah, and probably covered 5 meters vertically.
Exactly, yes.
And that was from a standing start. So
wow.
As he did the first jump, he stopped. He still had to turn and then jump the second time. And then afterwards, very unfortunate, he sort of sat there licking himself, saying like, oh, looking a bit embarrassed.
Yeah. I meant to do that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to catch that guinea fowl. I just wanted to give it a fright.
Funny, Stefan and I were tracking this morning, and we saw a guinea fowl that was separated and was hiding was around some dwarf mongoose. Steph seems to think that it might have been the guinea fowl that was attempted. It was up near Sydney's Dam.
That's exactly where we watched that sighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I remember, I'm sure there's some of your old viewers are older. What I mean, no.
Now you're in trouble, Marcus.
Let me rephrase that a little bit more gently. Some of your viewers have been here with us for some time now. You'll remember back to about 2009, perhaps. And I think it was Karula who was walking down the road. Misha and Induna were quite young at the time. I think it was her. She was walking down the road. I know that Peter Pretorius was presenting at the time. I can't remember who was on camera, but she was walking down the road. It was probably late summer because there were tall grasses, what we call the middle manaki. When you get the two tire tracks and you get the grass in the middle of the road, we call it a middle manaki, which means like the middleman. And that was quite high. So she was walking down the left, and there was a dove on the right. And as she walked past, she didn't see the dove because of the middle manaki. And as she walked past the dove got a fright and flew up, but flying up must have flapped the grasses. And so she got a fright, but it showed and I know that we got this on film, it showed the lightning fast instinct of a leopard. That in the same movement of getting a fright, she actually lifted herself, launched herself up, and in a similar way, Superman.
Yeah, sort of straight back off the wind.
For a dove.
We're waiting for you guys. We're just going to let you guys send a few more responses. In the meantime, we're just going to catch up on another sighting we had, and we'll move back to that sighting with quarantine. Well, in this last couple of weeks is the first time I've seen Shadow and her cub.
Yes.
And this second time we saw them, they were on an impala kill.
Yeah.
And not hoisted.
Yeah.
Which I found quite interesting.
Especially with a hyena den on that property.
Yeah.
And hyena that seemed to dog her and her cub.
Exactly. And we had a little discussion, I had a discussion with the viewers, that possibly that's why she hasn't been as successful. Although I know she does and has been seen hoisting kills before. But maybe her tendency not to hoist as much as a leopard like Karula, who's a fantastic mother.
Well,
who has a hyena den on the property as well.
Yeah, but we've also seen Karula not hoisting.
Okay, so it's interesting.
What time of the day was that kill?
I'm not sure. It was.
When did you?
It had been on the ground for 2 days.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and the cub was feeding on it while we were there.
Okay, now that's very unusual because a hyena will smell it as soon as it sort of happened almost.
And she'd done the normal sort of pretend and like kicked grass over it.
Yeah, because the stomach contents would have been taken out by then.
Yes, and she'd buried the stomach contents. Yeah. But she'd been on that for 2 days. She left it on the ground while she went. She fed first, left it on the ground, went to fetch the cub, and brought it back. And my understanding, this is so far Shadow's most successful attempt at raising a cub, getting to 7 months.
That's interesting. It's interesting, especially coming from a leopard who has been so successful over the years. But it just goes to show that different territories offer different challenges, I suppose, in raising cubs.
It is. And it's not like she has a territory that's not a prime territory. It's a very good territory that she holds.
Yeah, it is. Very much so.
Thank you very much, everyone, for all your responses on Twitter. It has been incredible. We also think the ability to do a few little... Well, there apparently might be some... Oh, there's a hyena visiting us.
Hello, Missy.
There we go. Hello, hyena. Just coming to make sure...
Par for the course.
If possible, can we put a spotlight on it and... We can't swing the camera that far. Sorry, guys. Hopefully you might come back closer just to make sure we're not up to too much mischief. But anyway, back to it. Thank you very much for your response. We think it's a really, really wonderful addition to the FireSide chats to be able to play back some of the highlights for the week. And also slow-mo.
Yes.
Because it's so quick in real life. That slow motion facility is incredible.
We've got some amazing equipment, and thanks to all the powers that be at WildEarth for bringing this new stuff over.
He's come closer, the hyena. He's just coming to have a look.
Hello, Missy. It's a
not
a very old one.
No, it looks like quite a young one. So, guys, we're going to invite Scott and Steph. We can catch up with a little bit of what they've been up to, and just have a general chat and give you a chance to send us some questions that we might not have been able to get to on Drive. Here we go.
Good evening, Marcus.
Hello, Scotty.
How are you?
Good, and you?
Hello, Steph. Nice to see you, Scotty.
I'm going to squeeze in here,
Steph.
Fine and you.
Let me relinquish. I'll squeeze up here.
Okay.
Squeeze in. Well, there's plenty of space on this lot.
Mind the
notch there.
Notch. In an inconvenient place.
Yes. That might.
Hello, everyone.
So, Scott, Steph, can you tell us a little bit about what you guys have been up to this week?
Well, go for it, I think.
Yeah, it's been a really wonderful time for myself and Steph over the last week. We actually know one another from lodges that we both worked at previously. It was actually the first lodge I ever worked at. So Steph was a mentor of mine and one of the experienced guides that helped teach us all the little tricks of the trade. And it's so great a few years down the line to be working with him again. And it's almost a slight roles reversed. I'm not entirely showing him the ropes, but I'm showing him the way around. So we've been spending the last week or two familiarizing myself even more, and also Steph with the property and all the roads and different places where the animals like to hide out. And he's still been teaching me a lot of stuff in between while we are on these missions. So thanks, Stefan. It's great to have you on board with us.
Well, thank you for being such a gracious host, all of you, in actual fact. It's been quite a lot of fun to experience this property with you, and especially, seeing you come so far.
Yeah.
Success.
Success, yeah. Well done.
Steph saw me as a hatchling, a guide hatchling. But we've had some great time along the way and got really lucky with some tracking. We've managed to track down a few different leopard that...
Oh, speaking of tracking, we just want to say thank you very much, because as Scott and Steph actually tracked and found Quarantine yesterday and then called us in. So could you guys tell us a bit more about that?
Well, we certainly can, and it was a very interesting tracking exercise. We had actually found Quarantine male in the morning, but it was after drive, and Brent had already closed down, sadly. We had found his tracks on top of our vehicle tracks, and we had driven into an area very close to Vuyatela Dam, and when we got to the dam, we lost his tracks. They headed into the bush on the northern side of the dam, so the opposite side of the dam to the Djuma waterhole camera. And Steph suggested we should just park the vehicle and wait. And it was absolutely the best timing you could ever imagine. We had been sitting for about 3 or 4 minutes silently. We hadn't heard any alarm calls, which is why Steph suggested we stopped. It's such a great way to find animals once the squirrels or francolin or mongoose, monkeys start alarming when they see them. And Steph said, "Come on, monkeys, please tell us where the leopard is." And in less than a split second, the monkey started alarm calling. And then, Steph, you can probably finish off the story from there.
And then we got our kit together, because it was a bit of a shock realizing that we just asked this question of the bush and it got answered all of a sudden. Like, well, what do we do? Of course, we went and we decided to walk into the block to see what the monkeys were alarm calling at. There was actually 2 different monkeys looking at a spot, and we picked a termite mound and we headed towards the termite mound, and we were about a meter or so, literally this far away from our face, and he jumped off of the termite mound. Luckily not at us. He jumped along the back. I actually thought it was a francolin at first. I didn't even know there was a leopard there, and I just out the corner of my eye caught this spotted coat and this flick of a tail, and there he was standing in all his glory, not a care in the world. He walked off, hid behind some leaves, and anyway, sightings from there.
Yeah, we owe you big time for that.
Yeah.
So, Steph, I'm sure quite a lot of our viewers are really interested about all your experience, and especially since we're talking about walking now, could you just tell us where you've walked and what experience you have on foot in wilderness areas, and what's your impression of Djuma so far since you've been walking around here?
Well, let's start with the last question first, because I think it's the most important one so far. It's like, I absolutely love walking around Djuma. It's unspoiled wilderness, which has been it's refreshing to see in this part of the world, and it's just such a healthy ecosystem here. There's just so much variable, from the crests all the way down to the drainage lines. It's just so healthy. It's nice to see, and of course, there's always lots to see. To come back to my history, I've been a field guide for 16 years. Started off very similar to Scott and everyone at this log, in actual fact. Started off learning from mentors, and some of my mentors were trails guides, were guides that really enjoyed to be off of the vehicle and far away from the lodges and in wilderness areas on foot as much as what they could be. And that sort of stuck with me, that passion, that wanting to turn over every log you see and wanting to look inside every flower, and it just sort of stuck with me. And I've walked all over South Africa. I quite enjoy doing hiking trails, but mainly I was operating commercially as a professional field guide in the Kruger National Park, and then from there in the Waterberg area in the Limpopo province, which is in the top sort of eastern corner of South Africa. But from there I've walked in Zambia, I've walked in Botswana, I've walked in Namibia, I've walked in Mozambique.
So moral of the story is Steph likes walking a lot.
Yeah.
And well, you guys have been really successful with the leopards on foot. I mean, not only quarantine, you found a few more.
Yeah, we've bumped into a few leopards on foot, which is always great and always interesting to see how their behavior differs, the different leopard, because obviously we are on foot, and even though they are used to being tracked and found by all the other game vehicles in this area that operate with trackers, we are an exception to the rule, I guess, with vehicles driving around here. So the point is that they do get used to being seen by people on foot, but they are not nearly as comfortable with us as when we're in the vehicle. So it's great to see how their reactions differ between the different individuals, and even the same individual on different occasions. And that's something that somebody like Steph, and I guess Marc as well, we've spent many years walking, combine all that information of the reactions of animals towards you, and that way build up a library of information that you can use when things do become dangerous, or you can use your experience to prevent things becoming dangerous, because it certainly is more dangerous than being in the vehicle. You've got more chance of startling the animals as you're more silent on foot.
But you're also, we pose a different entity to animals being on foot that is very different to the way they behave to the vehicles. We as humans, we've been around for millions of years. We've been in competition with the predators. I mean, we've been probably chasing predators off of kills for millions of years to get to their meat, or we've been in competition with them. And so just our stance, just everything about us comes across as aggressive. And I think it's just from that point of view that animal sizes up very, very quickly, whether we're vulnerable, whether we're a danger to them. And I think for a lot of us that get experience walking around the bush, especially all three of us, or four of us, sorry, have spent a lot of time walking around.
None of us are that good at counting.
Maths is not our strong point. That's why we're in the bush.
But having walked in different areas and encountering different behavioral patterns of animals, and something that I try and emphasize on drive so often is that when we answer questions about lion and elephant and animals that are here in the Sabi Sands, it doesn't mean that it goes the same for those same animals,
completely,
for the same species elsewhere.
Often animal behavior is area specific, rather than species specific.
Very much so.
Well, we've got our first question in from Sarah in California. Thank you very much for your question, Sarah. Sarah, and this one's for me, would like to know when the wildcats catch a bird, so lions or leopards, if they do manage to catch a bird, would they pluck the feathers first before eating them? Yes, they would, Sarah. The same way as I'm sure those of you who've watched quite a few times have watched a leopard on an impala or a steenbokkel. They'll pull the hair off, so they will quite often pluck the feathers before they start eating the meat. Thanks very much for that question, Sarah. And for the rest of you who are not sure, or might be new viewers, welcome to Fireside Chat. And you can send your questions via email to questions@wildearth.tv. Or if you're on Twitter, just use the hashtag Safari Live. And you can direct questions to us as a group or to us individually. Completely up to you guys.
Have you ever watched a leopard eating a frankfurter?
It's hilarious.
the feathers.
They don't really.
And they try and get the feathers out of the mouth. They pluck them, and then it's not like fur when they just so they can slide their tongue in and the teeth catch the fur, and then the fur falls out. But the feathers seem to stick to the tongue and stick like a peanut butter sandwich.
Exactly.
It is.
I must say, one of the most surreal experiences I've had this week with leopard on foot was with Scott and quarantine. Just by chance, we bumped into him hunting some Franklin, talking about the Franklin question.
I thought the quarantine was hunting Steph at this stage, just to let everyone know, but we'll backtrack the story.
And he was very close. He was very focused on the Franklin. And myself and Scott were looking for his tracks in two different areas. So when we finally got together with one another, and we thought that we had disturbed the area a bit too much for him, and so we made ourselves smaller by ducking down behind this bush. And he was so curious about what was going on. He walked right up to us. We were, I don't know, the other side of this fire away from him eventually, which is, I've never had that on foot before.
Yeah.
It's something that was very foreign.
And Quarantine's done it a few times in the last couple of months.
Do you think he's getting a bit too bold with it?
No, I just think he's a bit curious.
Yeah.
And having been born.
But you can't also,
born under a lodge deck.
Yeah.
So we've got, I think Marcus, this one's for you.
Yeah.
Since you're the only one of us who lives in a reserve that has white lions.
Yes.
And it's from Carla in the Netherlands. Thanks very much for your question, Carla. Carla would like to know the difference in survival rates in the cubs between white lions and tawny lions.
Hello, Carla. It's a very interesting question, and sometimes it varies. There have been times when white cubs have been targeted, but I suppose their survival rate is pretty much the same. And we've got some white lion down in the sort of southwestern part of the Timbavati at the moment. They were seen recently at one of the lodges. It's part of a pride, I think, known as the Giraffe Pride. I see them when I get home from either here or when I'm driving back home. I've got to drive through their territory before I can get home, and I quite often find them out on the road in the evenings when I'm on my way. And they're doing very well, but that is because it's a very stable pride. And I think in terms of their survival rate, as white individuals would be fine if the lion dynamics allowed them to be, because they're not albino. So they're not hindered by being very, very sensitive to light. They're merely leucistic animals, and they merely have a lighter coat. And I won't even go into the theory that lions are supposed to be paler in the Timbavati because there are different grasses there. But there have been white lions that haven't survived, but that has been because of the dynamics of the males taking over territories, and they would have been killed whether they were white or whether they were tawny cats. So from a point of view of answering the question, I think their chances of survival are pretty much the same, but of course their mortality rate depends entirely on the pride males and the taking over of the prides and things like that, where there's no discrimination. They'll be cubs that belong to another male, and they'll be killed accordingly. In fact, just a few months ago, there were some white lion cubs that were killed in that part of the Timbavati by changing over of a pride.
And I guess it could put a contributing factor towards people thinking that maybe they are targeted more is simply because there's more hype around them because they're white.
There is.
But a lot of cubs, be it lion or leopard, get killed. Either by their own species or other carnivores that will compete with them.
Very much so.
Oh, we've got another question from Lynn in Toronto. Good evening, Lynn. Thanks for your question. It's specifically about Shadow's cub. She says she noticed 2 black stripes on the back of Shadow's cub's ears. She wants to know, will these black stripes fade away in age, or will they stay? Then I didn't see any unusual sort of markings on Shadow's cub's ears. I think it is the normal sort of bottom half of the leopard's ears that will stay dark. So I think that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I wasn't looking closely enough. But as far as I saw, there was no unusual markings.
Something to look for. I mean, next time all 4 of us. I mean, next time we see Shadow's cub, we're certainly going to look for them.
And if we did miss something, or if I missed something, sorry, and we will have a look.
Something that's important for the viewers to remember is that you're often getting a much better picture than what we're actually seeing. Even though we've got a small monitor which shows us what the cameraman's filming, it's often covered in a thin film of dust, and it's very small. So it's hard for us to note exactly what is being seen compared to what you guys may be seeing.
I've also been in the situation where, to get the camera angle right, I'm sitting behind a tree trunk, and I'm actually not even seeing the leopard, but the camera's being able to see it, and it's all important to be able to get the picture out there, not so much for me to see it or take photos or anything. So I can sit in a position, especially when there's a narrow angle of view, and the camera's sitting way behind us as we are driving, and with that triangulation, we sometimes forced to sort of have a view of bushes and leaves and tree trunks. But it's going to be something I'm definitely going to look out for. In fact, the next time I hear that Shadow's cub's around, I'm going to look for him.
No, definitely. Him. So, next question is from Terry, and this is for Scott.
Okay.
You had that amazing African harrier hawk sighting earlier in the week. And Terry would like to know, would an African harrier hawk go for bush babies?
Ooh.
Very good question. Good evening, Terry, and thank you very much for sending this question through. And I'll start off by answering it, but I'm definitely going to spread the load and just to hear what animals...
I'm sorry, just so for those of them might have missed it, could you also just explain exactly what happened?
Cool. So, interestingly enough, we had returned into a lion sighting of the Kuhuma Pride here at Vuyatela Dam, not far behind us now. And the lions were fast asleep, but thankfully, in just a few minutes of sitting there with sleeping lions, I heard some birds alarm calling in a tree nearby and looked into that area and saw this African harrier hawk hanging from a kind of a vertical branch, and it was clawing, trying to pull out some prey from within a natural cavity in the tree. And they're highly specialized and evolved to hunt like this. That's how they get the majority of their food. They pluck it out of their hiding places in holes and logs, basically. And they've got the ability to be able to disjoint their leg to get into all these funny angles. And we saw it clawing away, but it couldn't actually get at anything this time. But I certainly think that they will take bush babies in just about anything that's hiding in the natural cavities in trees. A bush baby is certainly the right size, not too big for an African harrier hawk. And believe it or not, the following day, and this isn't something we see very often, the following day when myself and Steph were out, we saw another African harrier hawk also doing the same thing, but it did manage to pull something out of a cavity in the tree, but it was difficult to tell what it was, maybe a baby bird, maybe a small reptile. We couldn't get a good view before it flew off. But the following day, I mean, what are the chances? It's something we see so seldomly.
It's true.
I'm not sure, have you seen them successfully pluck anything
We have,
out?
actually. We had on camera just off of Zoe's Road once, I remember. And it's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it's the very same harrier hawk that we've got resident here. But it was like a Biberon's thick-toed gecko. It was a very large gecko, and we could clearly see that it was the gecko. But it was hanging upside down, trying to get its claws into that hole. They've got an incredible, it's not really their knee joint, it's more like the ankle joint that can extend an extra 30-odd degrees. So their habit is to sort of, using crevices in rocks and holes in trees, be able to feel around and as you say, pull things out. And I've no doubt, I've helped raise bush baby that was tiny, and something that size, which is even smaller than the gecko that we saw being eaten by a harrier hawk. There's no doubt that a harrier hawk, if it had to get its claws into it, would take a bush baby. I would think, though, that maybe an adult might be able to avoid it.
Importantly, I guess we should have said bush babies do, in fact, also nest in cavities in trees, because they need to be in a hole for the African harrier hawk to hunt them.
I think they're more specialist in baby birds and things.
I've seen them even in weavers' nests.
Yes.
I've seen them with barbets.
Hanging on weavers' colonies.
Barbet babies. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, and thanks very much, Terry, for sending that question through.
Well, this one's a little bit more funny. It's sort of extended it to the three of us who went to the touch rugby field today. It's Gemelin, thank you very much for your question. Gemelin's from Oklahoma, and she wants to know, when we're running around on the touch rugby field, would any of the big cats try eat us? So Steph came as a spectator today, and Scott and I ran around like silly people in the midday African sun. But I'll let you guys take this one.
Okay. Well, the chances are, there's always a chance. There's nothing that is guaranteed out here. That is the only thing we can guarantee you, that there is unknown with regards to all animal behavior. But it would be highly unlikely for any predator. There was 7 of us playing. It would be unlikely for any predator to come into a big open clearing in the middle of the day with no cover of darkness when there's 7
shouting,
screaming, competing individuals. So I don't think there is a chance. An elephant bull came to join in and spectate.
And the other thing, it goes back, interestingly, to what we were talking about earlier, about the fact that, modern day man's been in the current form for between 150 and 200,000 years. And a group of men running around and shouting to a lot of those animals, we are the dominant diurnal predator. would be quite a threatening thing, even for a lion or a leopard. They might come along the peripheries and have a look, but I think that, and I think the amount of noise, and also that they have an instinctive reaction to a group of people like that, which would probably be move away, they're dangerous.
At one stage, though, possibly that a predator may have attacked was this afternoon when you tripped and you hurt your ankle. And then they may have noticed a weaker link.
I was the wounded wildebeest.
I had a tracker once who remembers distinctly his grandfather telling him about stories about harvesting meat from predators. And the rule of thumb, obviously area dependent, was 4 men for a leopard kill and 10 men for a lion pride. So they would be able to chase off lion or leopard using that rule. And with 7 big brawny guys on the field, I have no doubt you would have seen off any advances from predators.
Yeah.
If we were running around in the dark, that would change things, but we'd probably still have that safeties in numbers, the loud noise, obscure, we're not usual prey.
Even now, sitting here in quarantine, I mean, we technically we could be prey. We've got bright lights in our faces, we can't see anything around us, and I've known leopard to use those circumstances, but the fact that there are 4 of us, well, there's more. We've got Brian and Andrew, and so, the fact that there are a bunch of us out here, they'll skirt us, but I don't think they'll try anything.
Well,
on
a more pointed note, Andrelina would like to know who won touch rugby.
Brent, I think it's only fair that you answer this question.
It was unfair. Scott cheated.
No, to be honest, it was 3-on-4, so that changed things. Nicky did actually play a little bit towards the end. It's typically a boys' sport.
Nicky even scored a try.
But yeah, Nicky got involved to try and create equilibrium on the team, so it was 4-on-4. And Brent was disadvantaged
I was in the losing team. It's fine.
By the lack of numbers and also his poor ankle that he hurt. So he wasn't firing on all cylinders this afternoon. And Scott's team won.
That's pretty much all he wanted to say.
But it really is good. Sorry,
I heard about it afterwards.
It really is good fun, though, and one of the things that's fairly tricky to do out here in the bush is to exercise. Going and running or even riding a bike through the bush would obviously come with its added risks, because again, unless there were 7 or 8 of you together, it would be difficult. And we all separated from far and wide. There's people that drove about 45 minutes from a lodge and a surrounding property to get to us. So it's something that we really enjoy and try and get to do as often as we can.
Now moving on, because my team lost. We're just going to move on. We've got a question for Steph from Julia. Julia would like to know, Steph, which has been your favourite sighting since you've been at Chuma?
That's a good one.
Hello, Julia. Thank you very much for your question. I was beginning to feel a bit left out over here at the end of my log. It, without doubt, has to be the sighting that myself and Scott had of quarantine on foot just the other day. I've never experienced an interaction with a wild animal like that on foot. And Scott and I were together. We could share it. It was a very surreal sighting, to be honest with you. I didn't quite know how to react because this animal just came right up to us, quite curious. And it generates a lot of different questions. It generates in you a question of, these leopards are in their 10th or 15th or 16th generation of living with us in the bush. And as Scott and Brent were just talking about our lives here, we live here. We're part of the ecosystem. We're essentially part of the food chain out here. And these animals get to know you as much as what we get to know them. And I had to have a moment afterwards, a moment in reflection, saying, how much did he know of us? Does he know of us as much as what we know of him? Does he know of our behavior and our voices even? Does he know how we smell? And, it was just a very awesome sighting for me. So thank you very much for that. It definitely is going to be a sighting that stays with me for many years, I think. So thank you very much, Julia.
Oh, we have another question from Shamrock. Thank you very much for your question, Shamrock. this is for all of us. It's a question, what do we think would happen if quarantine and Kunuma came together? For those of you who might be new and not sure, Quarantine and Kunuma are two young male leopards, about 28 months old, that we see very regularly on drive. And they are brothers and littermates, but they have been separate for probably about a year now, maybe a little bit less. So I don't know, who would like to take that one first?
Go for it, Marc.
Well, I suppose part of it was answered this week when we found them together on drive, and it's not really an answer we can give until we do get to see them. And we were very lucky that, excuse me, bit of a frog this evening, but they were around the lodge, and it seemed like Quarantine was shadowing his brother. It seemed like he was following him. There was no attempt, even though they were sitting and looking at each other, there was no attempt at actually any physical contact, but we don't know what transpired before we got there, and we actually don't know what transpired afterwards. We only know what we saw for those few minutes that we found them, and they moved down towards the dam, and sadly it was the end of drive, and shortly after the end of drive, as I was coming across the dam wall, we found them again at the water. They were actually drinking, not on opposite sides of the dam, but on opposite sides of a little inlet of the dam. So they were fairly close, but they were facing each other and drinking. There didn't seem to be any animosity whatsoever, but there also wasn't any camaraderie. There wasn't any sort of brotherly love that we might have seen in the past with Mission and Duna, because I haven't seen these two, of course, since, well, for their first 2 years of life. I only got to know them when they were 2 years old, so I don't know how they behaved as brothers in comparison. But what we saw was only one possible outcome of what they would do if they saw each other. There is a whole range of things that could happen.
We throw an impala into the mix.
Throw an impala into the mix. There's going to be claws and teeth. And
Steph, have you ever seen like littermates, young males? What happens to them after, where you've been somewhere else?
First, let's start off with the fact that for a mother to bring up two full-grown male cubs is quite rare to see. So it's not something that you see very often. You don't really see two male cubs, 2.5 years old, in the same area in their natal home range, before they start to exhibit these territorial displays. So I have every expectation that at some point in their lives they will compete over a similar resource. Space and food is generally what the cats fight over. But I also think that the dominant male leopards in this area, Vula being one of them, their father, will separate them naturally as they get older. So once they start competing with the dominant male leopards, they've got another 2 years of nomadic life left where they won't be tolerated in anyone's area. So I have every expectation that they will split. I don't think that they're going to be fighting, aggressive fighting with one another, competing for space. However, if they were to meet one another as adults, there's every expectation that they could fight.
So I think it's very critical that we specifically speaking of this age of these cubs, which is going on 2.5 years now, and it is the last, probably getting to sort of those last moments where they are likely to be together. I don't think we got to see Mission and Duna any time after they were around about this age, and we can't talk about any of the other cubs because they weren't two. The first litter was 2 females, and then the third litter was a male and a female. So it's just these 2 litters that were both males, and it obviously is going to be a lot different being 2 males as opposed to being a male and a female in the same litter.
Yeah. Oh, thanks very much, guys. There's been a lot of questions about Jigger. Jigger's gone to the doctor, as I said, to get some TLC. We're replacing the whole engine and some other various parts. So she needs a bit of TLC. We do work in a very tough environment. So Jigger's gone off to get a full new engine, and so hopefully when she comes back she'll be a lot more reliable, and that will hopefully having us running 2 vehicles again. So Jigger is getting some much needed love, and
we all can't wait.
Yes,
just like you, we cannot wait.
But it's been a fantastic week. We've had some unbelievable sightings, and I can only imagine the next week should be just as great. For me, definitely the highlight was the quarantine last night, and you guys had some fantastic stuff on foot. Marcus, a lion's chasing giraffe. I mean,
that and seeing Quarantine and Kanyuma
together as well.
And
it's
finding
really
Tingana, also finding Tingana here.
I think that was the first and only time that they've been seen together.
It is the camera. They were seen. I remember. I'm trying to think who it was. Somebody sent me a message to say they were seen together on the Djuma Waterhole cam around about July or so last year.
Okay.
So since then they haven't been seen, but that is only the Waterhole cam, and then we haven't had them on our drive cam since November. So it is probably one of the few lost times.
All of us here, thanks very, very much for joining us. It's been wonderful. And good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Love you lots.